Right. Hi, everybody, and welcome to San Francisco Independent Short Film Festival. I'm Ian Bignell from Festival Formula, and today we will be speaking to some of the filmmakers featured in The Kids Are All Right Part 2, with a question mark after all right, because who knows, they might not be. And these are the people asking these very questions out here, wonderful filmmakers, a wonderful full room. Unfortunately, there are two filmmakers that couldn't be with us today. We are missing Pigeon Girl, which is about Marianne, who's a free-spirited young girl that has a love for protecting and helping injured pigeons, as well as being a free spirit herself, a bit of a tomboy. Very, very fun watch. So if you get a chance to watch that, please do. And we are also missing my brother Juan. Anna is a 6-year-old girl and is being spoken to by a child therapist after the death of her brother Juan. But as the questions keep coming, the revelations reveal a bittersweet conclusion. Again, a really well-handled film, and unfortunately they can't be with us as well, but I would heavily recommend to watch it because it's a very, very good film. So thank you for all of you guys for showing up and giving me someone to talk to. Otherwise, this would be a very boring talk. So let's start off with a nice little icebreaker. Well, actually, before we get to the icebreaker, let's get you to introduce yourselves to everybody so everyone knows who you are. So I'm going to pick on you one by one. I want you just to name yourself, your film, and what role you are on the film. So let's start with you, Nicole.
Well, hi everyone, happy to be here. My name is Nicole DeMonesis. I'm a writer, director, producer in San Francisco. I was lucky enough to be the producer on Just Ask Him. I had heard Brian talk about this film for over a year, and I would keep bugging him like, when are you gonna make this film? I wanna make this film. I'm gonna produce your film. So really happy to be here. Glad more people are getting to see Just Ask Him. Thanks.
Nice. Irvin and Julia, introduce yourselves.
I'm Irvin Anderson, and I'm also in San Francisco, and Julie is also in San Francisco.
Nice.
So I think I'm a screenwriter and a building manager in San Francisco. The building came in handy for the film a little bit. But yeah, so I've been screenwriting for a while. I have a few options, but nothing made yet. But I persist. So yeah, and this is my wife, Julia.
I was helping with the filming as well as the directing, and then of course, because I was doing the filmmaking, I forced him to be in the camera, as well as our daughter, because we filmed it during the pandemic. So.
Oh, nice. There we go. Right, Grace.
Hi, I'm Grace Mellon. I'm the writer and actor in Purgatory, and actually our director Nadia is here too. She's in LA, so she's on a separate screen. I'm in Chicago.
Nice. And Nadia?
Hi, as Grace said, my name is Nadia Von Evers. I'm the director of Purgatory. Grace, I should say, she has writer next to her name, but she wrote and produced and co-produced and starred in it as well. I am in LA. I'm a teacher and a writer and an independent filmmaker. And I've made a couple of films in both LA and Chicago, and I really look forward to shooting something elsewhere.
All the things. Brian, if you introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Brian Tognati, writer and director and producer for Just Ask Him, and this is my first film. I've been a screenwriter for a while, as well as a playwright, and so I made this film just prior to the pandemic starting, which was good. All with a mostly local crew and cast in the Oakland East Bay area, San Francisco. So just really excited to meet all of you, and it was really loved seeing your film. So look forward to talking more about those.
Very nice. And finally, and by no means least, Tess.
Hi, I'm Tess. I am the writer, director, producer of Dog, and that's it. We shot in LA a while ago, actually, in 2016. So that's it. That's my brother, who's the actor. We work together a lot, mostly writing since the pandemic. So that's kind of feels like all we can do for a little while. I'm here in Brooklyn right now, but I'm based in Los Angeles. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed watching all your films.
It's a pleasure having you here. And I feel like a lot of filmmakers at the moment are able to be in a zone now where they're writing or finishing films by having slightly more time forced on their hands than they maybe would like. Right, let's start talking individually to you about your films, because they're all fantastic. So basically, this block is generally a coming of age kind of block, approaching youth and how youth deal with different types of scenarios happening to them. And that's quite a vague way of putting it, but to encompass all of you within that. So let's start with Nicole for Just Ask Him. So Just Ask Him, I love, because it's such a beautifully simple story, and it's coming of age, it's LGBTQ, and you've got
it has a happy ending. Oh my God.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Who knew?
We need more happy endings.
As someone that watches a lot of films, like, everything's quite negative out there. So to have a nice positive ending, I was really pleased, because you put a really interesting dynamic in there, which is like a triangle of him, best friends, and mother, and of course mum's always right. Okay, I mean, it's like, it's mum always offers the best advice. So I mean, what was the idea? Where did the ideas come from for making this film and constructing this film?
Well, Brian wrote this beautiful film. I could talk a little bit more about bringing the kind of the crew together, because we had a really great DP, Ryan Casnati. The dream sequence, the beautiful pink background, and half naked man, young man, telling him to just ask him. Those scenes really came together with the collaboration of the DP and Brian. But Brian, do you want to tell a little bit more about the genesis of your story? Because this is definitely your story that you wanted to tell.
Yeah, this was kind of a passion project for me, because I think, as you mentioned, especially in the gay film world, we do have a lot of films that are very dark and sad. And I think especially, and this was before the crazy 2020 that we're experiencing now, but I just feel like, in a lot of the stories, it's either about coming out, or it's about loss of innocence, and I kind of wanted to bring more of that hopefulness and that sense of joy. And I think especially, our films are about young people, and I feel like young people now, are just dealing with a lot. They're coping with a lot. And I know LGBT younger people, have it really rough. And it's not, I think, just LGBT people, but just people, anyone who's different, makes it really just hard to be in high school. And I really wanted to write a film about, someone who has to take a risk, has to really come out of themselves and risks, potentially something bad happening, but they sort of, they go for it, they just do it. And I think that's just a message that I really wanted to get out there in the world, that despite how difficult it is being different and being in high school, that good things can happen if you put yourself out there.
I think that's a really.
I'll just say this, if it's okay. I love the mom character, because I think more people need to have their parents in their corner and stuff like that. So it's nice to see that showcased in this little film. So I'll just put that out there.
I thought it was really interesting as well, the point you just raised, Brian. And as a company, we look at films like a pre-screener, and we take stuff on, and we get a lot of LGBTQ films come our way. And you're right, there's so many films that have a bleak message. And Nicole, you're right, to your point as well, that the message is strong, it's got a good ending. And it's so frustrating when everything has to be, it's issue-led naturally anyway, but to have it finishing on such a bum note. I mean, the LGBTQ community that attend a lot of these screenings have had enough of this. Like they've experienced these experiences too many times to want to be put through it again. So we go out of our way when we select films to pick films with positive messages, because actually it's about celebrating the community, not saying, here's another sob story, someone being beaten up and kicked into the gutter again, because they're a dime a dozen, they don't mean anything. We've all been through it. So it's good that you really focused in on making something that is positive, also as a coming of age story as well, because generally speaking, even having a relationship in high school is hard enough. With the same sex, it's an important thing to raise. So, Nicole, how did you actually come to meet Brian and want to produce his work?
I remember Brian, he put an ad, he was looking for someone to help with this project early on, and I had met with him and talked with him and just gave him a little producing advice in the early stages of this. But I always kept Brian in the back of my mind, like I knew he wanted to get on film sets and stuff, and I was I was a second AD on this feature for a coming of age Christian film. I hired so many gay people. There were so many gay people on that set. It was hysterical. I was very proud of that. And so Brian came on, he was a PA for that film. And he also, I think he was a good sport. He's actually in the church scene for a very dramatic scene in the movie as an extra. But he got some on-set experience because the director, he was local to Dublin, California. And, it was a passion project. He's from Nigeria. He wanted to tell a story about a young Nigerian man who's going to college, and he's tested for the first time. And there are real life consequences from that, from his decisions. And so it was a fairly small independent production, but it was still a working set. And there was a lot of people that it was their first time on a set, first time PAing. And Brian was a good sport, came out in PA, and I just I've always kept in the back of my mind if he wanted to work on a set or get some more experience. He also another project that I produced called Chosen Fam, which is a web series that just premiered at Frameline. Brian was a good sport too. He came out and he was an extra on that set and playing the evil white guy against queer people. So Brian's always a good sport, and we've just been friends for a while, and hoping to work on more projects with him. So.
Well, if they turn out like this, definitely, I hope so. And how was it working with the cast? I mean, the cast looks really well picked. I mean, it's a really balanced film in terms of your casting. What was that process like?
Yeah, so that was a really interesting part of the process because we did do casting locally, and I wasn't really sure if we were going to find the right folks for the parts. And it was a fairly challenging process, I think, especially casting younger people, as you guys probably know. Can sometimes be challenging, especially if you have certain things that you're looking for. And but we were lucky, I think. Donovan Napoli, who played Andrew, the lead in the piece, we were sort of lucky to get him in the sense that he did come to audition and kind of blew me away. And I was, and he was also though in the process of moving to LA to go to acting school. So I was lucky enough to kind of work around his schedule a little bit. So that was a bit challenging, but I think it was worth it to get an actor who is kind of up and coming and is obviously committed 100% to his craft. So, and with a lot of the other actors, it was really great to have that local talent. And as I think a lot of the filmmakers who are based in the Bay Area know that we have a lot of acting talent here, and it's I think it's a something that is a joy of working in the Bay Area, because there's a lot of actors who are looking for film work. There's not as much film work obviously here as there would be in LA and New York, but it's great to have the access to that. And but it was a learning experience. I think I realized that sometimes casting is, you have to find it just by accident, because you go to this, if you go to backstage or you go to the other places, you can sometimes just not quite find, but then somebody accidentally hears about it and they end up being right for the part. So you got to be open to those little accidents.
I always find there's a lot of luck involved in casting, because you can find a rough gem, but making sure they come out of their shell to deliver the performance and that they're totally on board with the script is another thing. I mean, obviously everything about shooting is multifaceted, but that's definitely one area that is. But well done on making a really fun, enjoyable film with a positive message.
Yeah, and the young men in it had to be comfortable with the subject matter, and that was something we brought up in casting. And just finding actors that it was authentic to them and they were comfortable was a big part of it, and I think it shows in the film. So
yeah, definitely. I think you have made a very beautiful film, so well done. Thank you for that. Moving on, let's go on to Morning with Irvin and Julia. So your film is, well, where to start with your film? It's quite a ride. We start with a child kind of just having free run around the house, just doing lap after lap after lap, But obviously from the get-go, you give that kind of carrot that something's not quite right here. And obviously that sort of dawns on the child as it goes. But before we get to that, I kind of like enjoyed this sense of freedom that when a child has freedom that they can act quite grown up. Was that something intentionally you wanted to write into the character that you had with this? Like actually they're quite self-sufficient to a point.
I'll leave that to you.
Well, originally the idea, well, Irvin Allison said, oh my God, I got this great idea for a short film. What if like during this pandemic, like both parents die and the kids just running around? I was like, oh my God, that is so gruesome. But I said, let's do it. And so.
Yeah, I think, sorry to interrupt. I think the idea was like, what is the parents, like the thing, like what fears do we have as parents? And like, if something happened to us, like what would happen to our daughter? So in my head, you always think about all these horrible things that could happen. You try to be optimistic, but you have fears. And I think one of the fears that I sort of think about is if something happened to us, our daughter, she was 5, but now she's 6. But you wonder, okay, what's going to happen? Is she old enough to take care of herself if something happened one day for the afternoon or the day until someone finds her? And it kind of naturally progressed. But I think the original idea was just like a fear that I have as a parent. And I knew Julia is a filmmaker. She's made short films, so I knew she could pull it off. If I had the idea, I'm like, she can make it happen. So then we kind of went from there. So
yeah, from there, we kind of made the story a little bit, because I just like, I don't know, it's a little too morbid to have both parents die. Maybe just one parent. We seriously don't know where the other parent is. So then we just started, mostly it was just focused on Amelie, our daughter, and just playing and kind of doing different things. But as it progressed, we just kind of made her a little bit more quote unquote adult and taking care of herself. And then the mystery kind of unveils that father has.
Well, they say in film to never work with animals and children. Everything can go wrong with it. How was working with a child, even one that's close? Was that an enjoyable experience, or was it just an experience?
Well, I'm obsessed with taking pictures and videos of my daughter since she was born. So now she's like, oh, like I'm the paparazzi. She's like, no more, Mom, no more. So this time we were like, okay, Amelie, this is a film. And she goes, can my name be Sophia? And she just
sure.
So she was amazing.
Yeah, she had one. That was her one. She's like, my name should be Sophia. I'm like, that's great. Yes. Okay, we can work with that. But as far as casting, we didn't have much trouble because we knew who was going to be in it.
No, I obviously have to ask that question because I hear so many horror stories of like trying to shoot a cat for like a day because they just won't sit in the right position, and obviously children wriggle around all the time and they just fidgeting around and attention being absorbed onto other things, shall we say.
Also, I like the film. I was going to say that part where she's kind of mad and she's punching her stuffed animal. She was actually mad at me. She was like, I'm done. And I said, I'm going to make this work.
Oh, man. Also, I like the decision that you made as well to shoot in black and white. I have my own theories of why you've done it, but was there a particular decision why you decided to shoot in black and white?
Well, aesthetically, I thought it would be really interesting, as well as we just moved into our apartment, and so it wasn't as nice, and it was a little cluttered, and I thought the black and white kind of would take that away from that. So it was at first when we were filming, which I wasn't even thinking of black and white. It just, as I was editing, it just looked more pleasing to the eye, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and the crew, I mean, it was us. We're the crew, the two of us. We used an iPhone. Our budget was $0. So we just made it happen, I think black and white, and I think she did a great job filming it. I mean, I think it looks real for what we had. I think it really looks visually kind of amazing at certain points. The black and white, I think, and we wanted sort of a creepy ambiance as well, something that was a little foreboding, and I thought black and white played to that a little better as well.
I kind of viewed it as a almost animalistic approach in terms of like, and a lot of animals like see things in black and white, and it's kind of like being free and sort of being like an animal inside a flat. I kind of got almost that approach to it. That's me reading too much into film. I watch film too much, and it's probably jumping off at a tangent. But I really got that kind of impression of like, I'm free. I'm going to do what I want to do. And it's almost like a POV shot walking around. It just seemed to work really well, because I think if there was color inside there, it would add too much life to it. And I think the fact that, you know, there is a carrot already at the beginning of the film that you think, oh, you might suspect the dad's dead. Actually sucking the color out and making everything feel a bit surreal kind of really heightens that, I think. So I was really impressed. I mean, even more impressed the fact that you've been shooting on an iPhone and very, very simply done. I mean, you know, it's amazing what you can do with an iPhone and a bit of luck.
Yeah, and unfortunately, our film didn't have a happy ending, but but I think, you know, there is the lingering question of where's the mom. So maybe, you know, I think a more optimistic person would say the mother's going to come home and the girl's okay. Maybe the more pessimistic person's like, oh, this girl's in big trouble. You know, it's kind of leave that up to the viewer.
I was kind of hoping at the end there'd be like a real surprise where all of a sudden the dad just goes boom like that.
Yeah. Well, it was very funny. Amelie actually, she said, you know, I'm worried that people are going to think Daddy's really dead. Maybe we should have a film where he's dancing and laughing. No.
Well done. It's a really well shot piece, and obviously is a tragic piece. But again, it's a younger coming of age story, because obviously they're learning very different life lessons at a very different time in their life. Well done anyway on making a really well crafted film.
Thank you.
Right, on to Teen Purgatory with Grace and Nadia. So Purgatory is a really interesting story, because basically you've got a woman or young girl, teenager, that is looking to leave her psychiatry sessions that she's having. She's in a mental institution, and there is the complication of love. Doesn't love complicate everything? Where was the origins behind this script? Because it feels like it came from a real sort of like heartfelt place. Maybe if you could get into that, Grace.
Yeah, this definitely is based on some personal experiences. There was a time where I was in a place that was similar to the one like depicted in my movie, and something that I noticed while I was there is the hesitancy to leave, despite the insistence that like it was a terrible place and like, God, I feel stuck here, but it's not a ward, so like you can leave. But this idea that like, sort of like in my limited knowledge of Catholicism, this idea of purgatory, that if you leave, it could either get better or worse, and because it could get worse, it's best not to risk it, even if it means it could get exponentially better. So it was based on my experiences of like being tied to this idea of from my own experiences and what I witnessed in some of the people I met, this attachment to an identity of mental illness, and how shedding that isn't just an act of like freeing yourself. It's also like an entirely uncomfortable shift that is not always, often feels unsafe and scary.
I was really touched, because obviously there's this kind of world in that community of wanting to escape from where they are. Like they're being held, but they're not being held, but they are being held, and that kind of like that to and fro. And also I love this idea of conspiracy theory that everyone had in terms of like the people that are interviewing them, that everyone's got this conspiracy theory on who they actually are and what their backgrounds were. Again, is just to touch back on that, is that something that you experienced as well in terms of like all these kind of like gossip stories about all these people that you'd speak to? Is that from a true place?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the thing is that when you're in a place like that, your world is pretty small. And so the sessions that you go to, the doctors that you meet with, that becomes a very, very big part of your life. And because you know almost nothing about those people, but they know everything about you, there's all sorts of guessing and you know, rumors, and we have Google. So, I mean, we were able to look up a lot of things about people we were curious about. And there were definitely like disagreements between patients, like who was cool and who wasn't in terms of the doctors, and who was, you know, who they thought was like fun in real life and who was probably really boring.
And Nadia, so how did you come to stumble across across Grace and her wonderful script that she wrote.
Yeah, Grace is actually a former student of mine. I taught for a while at a really great academic institution in Chicago called the Chicago Academy for the Arts, where Grace attended. I was actually an English and writing teacher, but incidentally, because of a bizarre twist of things, I actually sat in on her audition to the theater department when she was 15 or 16 years old. And she was immensely talented. I mean, I remember we were all just like, oh my God, okay, well, we have to take her, that's like a hard yes. And then, I worked with her as a writing teacher. She actually came to me. I'm a writer predominantly. I had not ever directed anything. And she wrote a short film called Bath Salt a few years ago. And I had worked on her with the story, and I had helped her with the script, and I had taught screenwriting. I just never directed anything myself. And she came to me and asked me to direct it, and I was like, no. She kind of strong-armed me, and we made the film, and it turned out well. And we went to festivals with it, and we really loved it. And so when she wrote Purgatory, she brought that back to me, and we were workshopping it. And it's just really cool because I've gotten to see her work. I feel that I'm in a really unique position because as somebody who worked with her for a very long time now, for now many years, as a writer, I've really got to see her writing develop, and it's been a real privilege to bring it to life because I've been so intimate with it. Like when you go through that drafting process with someone for literally years, I think that you're like inside the script in a different way, and it just became sort of super obvious that we would work on, this together.
Nice.
I think something Grace is really good at is that, she writes about trauma, but she writes about trauma in a way that I find both funny. I mean, I think there's things that are funny in this script, and also ultimately uplifting. I think we wanted to make a film that we never got into the depth of what the people's trauma was. Like we knew that there was some manner of, trauma there because everyone was in this inpatient, facility, not an institution per se, because you can leave if you want, but we were way less interested in and I was really taken by thematically in the script, this idea that there was not this hyper focus on what was wrong. It was more about like, what does it look like when you're at a crossroads and you're facing like a really difficult decision? Like, am I well enough? And I've got to ultimately make the call on like, am I well enough to go out into the world? And like Grace said, is that going to be better or worse in this sort of like liminal state that I think I had never been in a program like that, and yet I identified with that sort of like stasis that the character felt so overwhelmingly when I read it. It was just super resonant. And so even though it's in a very particular time, place, environment, I felt that like that feeling of like sort of having to be responsible for your own kind of like huge decisions and like what the implications of them would be felt really relevant to me. So it was an honor to work on.
Yeah, and again, I want to talk about the casting in this as well, because the casting, again, a wonderful group of people, because it's a real sort of like tribal feeling that's going on during this film. And how did that come about?
Well, a couple of the people who were in the cast I knew prior to shooting this movie. For instance, the producer plays Rachel, my co-producer, and other than that, we hosted auditions in Los Angeles and just happened to get really lucky with the people who came in and found a really nice fit of not only great actors, but like people who were very comfortable with each other and people who also were very comfortable like improvising, not necessarily going off script, but like being able to sort of banter with each other in like dead spaces in the script or in like long shots. So yeah, that was just a place where we got really lucky. And something I really wanted to touch on in this script was how I forgot the character's name. Oh my God, that's so scary.
Which one?
Claire, the character I play, so the lead. That's really embarrassing. Okay, so
No, side note, she rewrote it. She wrote a feature version recently that is like
Right.
phenomenal, but many of it's true, it's so good, but many of the characters' names have changed. That's why she's forgetting.
That's nice. I think it's I really wanted to create something where Claire, you know, Claire is queer identifying. It's never exactly specified exactly how she identifies in terms of her sexuality, but she meets Mia, and Mia's very flirtatious and forward and kind of wakes up something inside Claire, like, oh, I'm kind of a person outside of this identity of mental illness and trauma. And I get a little bit tired of seeing TV shows and movies where the point of the whole thing is, oh, they're gay. You know what I mean? Not to say that there isn't a place for those stories. I think those are vital, but I also like when stories are about somebody and then they happen to be gay or they happen to be queer, and as someone who identifies as queer, I think that we need more stories where they're just integrated into the lives of other people, and that's not their focal point, their focal trait.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have to be naturally told stories, and you have to justify. I mean, I think that especially with bigger production companies and VODs out there, I think there's this tendency to play the LGBTQ card just because they can play the LGBTQ card, and I think that I watch some things and I just go, that just doesn't work on any level. It just makes me cringe. It doesn't feel realistic. It feels like it's shoehorned in. I think what you have here, I kind of refer to your film, it weirdly is like a double conflict, because there's the conflict of herself in the mental establishment and basically wanting to let herself, hello, got a little person over there. And I kind of look at her conflict as like, I can leave and I want to move on and have that almost new journey of restarting life and having something that feels familiar. But then it's always hindsight, isn't it? And hindsight is the next conflict point, because hindsight holds the hand of LGBTQ and brings something into her life which is then totally different and actually makes her question, well, where is my home? Is home here? Is home outside here? Am I going to find this same relationship outside of these walls? And really sort of like taking the world of LGBTQ and also taking the world of that mental institution, or I'm using the wrong words horribly there, but you know what I mean, of that mental group of people. It really is like a double conflict, which I thought worked beautifully, because that bit towards the end of the relationship with the LGBTQ relationship, I wasn't A, expecting that, or B, ready for that. I just saw, Nicole, you put your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I had a question for Grace, just about your character, not your character, Mia's character. I was wondering about her nightmares and the paintings that are on her wall, and they're like of a goat, and like they're kind of happy nightmares. I wondered if you could talk more about that character. Your love interest was very cute. I was rooting for you guys to work it out. I was rooting for a happy ending.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah. Well, those paintings were actually done by my mom, and she lent them to us to use as part of our set design. And she's got a very sort of quirky, semi-dark painting style. So they worked really well in terms of Mia's character. I think Mia is, I think she's one of those people who really thrives at like these institution-like places. I think she's somebody who maybe wouldn't be that level of confident or bold or flirtatious in the outside world. So yeah, I think she's kind of exactly what Claire needs, in that she's somebody who's very comfortable with herself and comfortable with her sexuality, and for better or worse illuminates for Claire like where she stands in comparison and what that means in terms of her discharging or not.
No, it was interesting. It was interesting to see that dynamic. So congratulations on your film.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Good question, Nicole. You can stay. Right. Well, anyway, I really enjoyed your film, and I think that again, it's showing a subject matter in a different light and giving a different perspective. And I think that through the writing, through the acting, through the delivery and the execution, I think you've made something truly, truly beautiful. So congratulations to you both on making something really cool.
Thank you very
Finally, Tess, down by no means at least with Dog.
Hi.
So I didn't know where to start with this because everyone's played Truth or Dare, and Truth or Dare can be one of those horrible things which can make or break your adolescence in terms of what you're prepared to reveal. Obviously, you take this up a notch. I mean, I'm hoping this isn't something that happened to you from experience, so this is just a wonderful piece of fiction, and that's it.
It is a wonderful piece of fiction. It's based on a half truth where that was it's such a sad story when you dip into the truth of it. But it's just a dear friend of mine who accidentally killed a dog with their car, and they told me that story and the trauma of that, and I was drawn to it and drawn to that experience of a person taking a life, and how deeply it affected them, and then I kind of turned it on its head. Yeah,
and I think that the one thing I really like about it, again, I've asked the same question already a couple of times, but again, casting is something that I really want to bring into this because you've got a big group of people that have to gel, have to work, and if you're a fly on the wall, which the audience is, with the world building that you're doing, which is hard with short because you've got to, those first 4 minutes are really, really important to get your narrative down and for it to make sense. Again, talk about the casting process in that because that really felt like that gelled quite well for you.
Yeah, well, I cheated, so that's how it turned out so well. I'm very lucky. The actor who played the murderer, the boy at the end, is actually my little brother. And we've worked together a lot. We've made a couple films together. And at the time that we shot the film, he was in acting school at Carnegie Mellon, and the other actors are classmates of his. So it was their summer break, and he was coming to visit me in LA, and I was like, dude, let's make a thing. Who do you know who's going to be here? So one kid came up from Santa Barbara, and the other two were also based in LA. I think one thing that helped, not only with the kind of chemistry of them as a cast, but we shot the whole thing like a play. We really ran through the whole script every time. So when you're cutting away to other characters' coverage, we did the whole thing. So we just read the whole script and focused on each character like 2 or 3 times and did different coverage of them. But I think that really helped get some nuanced listening, which was really important to me because as much as it is about this horror story of this kid who kills a dog, it's for me much more about that moment kind of during your adolescence when you start to choose your friends based on who they are as people instead of based on them being in your school or your neighbor or your mom's friend's kid. But when you really start to look at other humans and say, oh, I don't agree with you, we don't line up, or we do and I'm attracted to this kind of person or that kind of person. So I wanted, as much as the film is a scary story around a campfire, it's much more about the other characters and how they will probably never speak to this kid again, or maybe they'll reach out and help him, whatever it is, but to have a kind of shift or a break in those relationships that when you're young, you take for granted because that's what they're your friends. Of course, whatever, we're friends. And then you kind of start to learn more about each other and can lose touch with those people.
Yeah, and it's because it's that world of peer pressure, isn't it? Because you feel obliged in a group, especially in a group scenario, to bare your soul. And as I said earlier on, it's like a make or break scenario with that. And obviously, it's a coming of age story, but it's also entwined with mental health as well. Because obviously, when he makes that reveals what he's done with the dog, and he's looking quite blank, in terms of like, I'm quite surprised why everyone's looking at me strangely. Is this normal? Isn't I just wanted to see what happened, and everyone's like, why would you want to see what happened? You know what's going to happen. It's weird. I mean, this is the origins of possibly a Ted Bundy, or something like that. I think that's the other area of your film which really kind of like made me go, oh, this is awkward fly on the wall time now. I don't like watching this. Was that something that you're totally aiming for?
Yeah, totally. I tried to kind of lull you into a false sense of, comfort or confidence. And, I wanted the audience to be sitting there thinking like, all right, who's going to jump off the roof, or who's going to eat something gross, like whatever this is going to be, and to subvert those expectations. That was definitely my goal. You're totally spot on with the birth of a serial killer somehow. I think that there is a lot of work to be done in the world in terms of this question of, feels like a big kind of esoteric topic to jump into, but Me Too and toxic masculinity, and how do we solve this problem that we have in our society about how we treat each other, and how men treat women, and honestly how men are treated, and how they are told what it means to be a man. And I think that it's on all of us to reach out to someone who you see who might be struggling, or who might have aggression issues, or who might have a darker part of themselves that is absolutely valid and absolutely important to investigate as a community, or as a family, or as a friendship, so that you can help that person not become Ted Bundy, because we all have that light and darkness inside of us. And I think that there's really a way to kind of move forward as humans that will, kind of bring everyone along, and not, there's a lot of shaming, right? It feels like there's a lot of shaming around, like, how could you possibly do something like that? You are a monster. When really it's like, let's talk about why you did that, and what you might need from me in order to move on and be a healthy person. So I think if this were like a feature, I would definitely investigate more like where he's going, why he is that way. And I really think it could be like a genre film with a monster.
You just telegraphed my next point.
Oh, great.
When I was watching it, and this is because I watch so many films, you can see things which are, I'm not going to say proof of concept, it's a horrible word, but things that could develop into a feature. And I was watching, I was going, right, we're at the halfway point and the conflict point has happened, and then all of a sudden I felt like I didn't want to be taken out of the end of your film. I wanted it to continue. I wanted to see more, because you developed this and it's a bombshell moment and the bomb's still going off, and you take everyone out, and it's quite impactful when you do it, and you're kind of like, whoa, that's crazy. And then you're kind of going, I wonder what happens next. What does happen next? And do you see a development of him turning into something more sinister, or or is he still attacking animals? I don't know. I was just wondering if a feature was something that was on the agenda with this, because you've made something quite interesting.
Yeah, 100%. I think you're right on with what it could possibly be, and I think I have to make a choice about what I want the feature to be. And I think right now I'm most interested in this idea of like a monster movie, and the monster is your kind of innate toxic masculinity, and trying to figure out almost like a horror version of Big Mouth, right? Where you have this thing that's telling you how to be a certain way, or that's, allowing you to pursue these instincts that are not healthy. And really, I don't know how it ends. My instinct is that it ends tragically and something very bad happens. And the lesson is all these people around this person should have tried harder, but maybe there's another way to do it. But that's kind of where I'm thinking of taking it.
I think that's always the tragedy of these kind of stories, isn't there? Is that people always look at the alarm bells and then just think, oh, it's just a phase.
Or it's not my job. Yeah,
exactly. It's just one of those things where you just go, no, maybe this isn't a phase. This is just weird. But I thought you made something really, really interesting, well shot, well pitched.
Thank you.
Again, congratulations. And this brings me, unfortunately, to the end of the Q&A. We have run out of time. We've run over time. I wish I had more time. We don't have enough time. That's the bottom line. So it leaves me to say it has been a pleasure speaking to you all, and I wish you all a great festival. Thank you to the audience for watching, and we do hope that you tune in to what else the festival has to offer. Again, thank you all so much for your time and giving us insight into your babies that you made, your wonderful creations. And,
You hear that, Brian? We made a baby.
You made a baby. You heard it here first. So enjoy the rest of the circuit in these wonderfully confusing times that we have. And hopefully we'll be able to meet up in person at some point and have a drink when we can actually touch and look at each other again. But thank you again for coming along and being so honest.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Take
much.
care,
so much for
everyone.
having us.
Everybody.
Go to the film.
Bye. Great work, everyone.